Welcome to the Iran 1400 Project podcast, where we explore the past, present, and possible futures of Iran through informed dialogue, independent thought, and diverse voices. From historical insight to emerging narratives, we connect ideas to action in the pursuit of a more just, inclusive, and forward-looking society. Join us as we rethink Iran's trajectory, one conversation at a time.
You know, we often think of hope as a quiet thing, right? Personal.
A gentle wish, maybe.
Yeah, just a feeling or maybe something fleeting. But what if it's far more than that? Mm-hmm. What if, especially in places facing, intense challenges, hope isn't just a sentiment, but actually a powerful, active force?
A kind of resource.
Exactly. An indispensable civic resource. Mm. And that's really the idea we're diving deep into today.
Sounds fascinating.
Our deep dive is called Hope as Civic Strength, Imagination, Endurance, and the Future of Iran. And working with this really insightful article,
right,
it makes a compelling case, arguing that hope might just be the most radical form of civic strength there is.
And for you, the listener, our mission today is to really unpack that. We want to explore how hope in Iran specifically has shifted over the last century or so.
Shifted how?
Well, moving beyond just like passive optimism, becoming something strategic, a moral force even. It's like this defiant refusal to just give in to grief or stagnation. Even with domestic authoritarianism, regional conflict, all of it.
So it fuels change.
We'll explore how it functions as a really critical engine for change.
Yeah. That idea, hope as a civic resource.
Yeah.
That's really grabbing me. So, how do we even start defining hope in that specific way? Is it really more than just feeling good?
Oh, absolutely. It's much more structured than just a feeling. Psychologically, hope is often defined by two key parts.
Okay.
There's agency, that's the motivation, the belief that you can pursue your goals.
The drive.
Right. And then there are pathways. That's your ability to actually imagine routes, ways to get to those goals, even if they're difficult.
Ah, okay. So it's not just wanting something, it's believing you can act and seeing a possible way forward.
Precisely. And you can see how that dual structure fits perfectly with civic action, right? Believing you can make a difference and seeing potential ways, often through shared struggle, to make change happen.
It's the engine.
It's the engine that keeps people involved, keeps them participating, even when things look, incredibly uncertain.
That makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. It's the internal fuel to actually do something. Mm. Does the article bring in any other frameworks to help us understand this civic hope?
It does, yeah. It introduces Aram Hessami's framework from a work called 2-3 Words, and this really deepens the idea of civic life itself.
How so?
Hessami sees civic life as being grounded in moral imagination, ethical responsibility, and a fundamental commitment to possibility.
Okay, moral imagination.
Yeah. He doesn't explicitly hammer on the word hope all the time, but it's completely woven into how he sees citizenship.
Right.
For him, being a citizen is inherently a forward-looking act. It's something you sustain, not because you're certain of the outcome.
Which you rarely are.
Exactly. But because you have the will to imagine something better and then to try and build it, even with all the obstacles.
It's not just dreaming.
No, it's about constructive agency. It's about holding on to your dignity and really fundamentally refusing to be paralyzed by fear or, fatalism.
That's incredibly powerful. Citizenship as an act of hope.
Yes.
And when you frame it like that, it seems like hope could almost function like a kind of informal institution.
That's a great way to put it. Precisely. It becomes this informal yet incredibly powerful institution.
How does that work?
It preserves collective memory, it transmits a moral vision across generations, and crucially, it motivates action again and again through time. It's that thread.
Okay, so if hope is this active kind of enduring force, this institution, how has that shown up over time in Iran? Can we point to specific moments where this civic strength really surged?
Oh, definitely. Iran's modern history is, it's full of these surges. And even the final outcomes weren't always what people initially hoped for.
Right. History's messy.
Exactly. But the milestones themselves show this persistent ability to reimagine the future. Take the 1906 Constitutional Revolution.
Okay, way back.
Yeah. This was really the birth of Iran's modern civic imagination, people demanding a constitution, a parliament, the majels, the rule of law. Hope there looked like a national awakening, pushing for legal reform.
Foundational moment.
Absolutely. Then jump forward to 1951-53, the nationalization movement.
Mossadegh.
Under Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, yeah. Iranians rallied to get control of their oil, assert national sovereignty. Hope there was about economic independence, democratic dreams.
Very tangible goals.
Very. Then the 1979 revolution. Now, obviously complex and later hijacked by authoritarianism. We know that.
Yeah.
But it began with massive, widespread hope. Diverse groups coming together, dreaming of justice, independence, dignity, huge transformation energy.
Okay. And more recently?
Well, the 2009 Green Movement, that was sparked by the disputed elections. The slogan, "Where is my vote?" That wasn't just about votes. It was a cry for dignity, for transparency, for reform. Hope showed up as civic unity, peaceful protests on a huge scale.
I remember the images.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
And then, of course, the 2022 Woman, Life, Freedom Uprising, just incredibly powerful, feminist, youth-led, rooted in the basic right to choose, to speak, to live freely. Hope was literally written on the streets in performances, protests, solidarity.
It's striking. You see this pattern, this return to hope as a generative force.
Exactly.
But you mentioned outcomes falling short sometimes. That raises the question, why? Why didn't these massive surges of hope always lead to the desired result?
That's a really important question, and it leads us into a crucial contrast, really, how the politics of hope itself became a battleground.
A battleground.
Yeah. Think about the period before 1979. Hope was, generally speaking, this unifying, almost electrifying force, mobilizing people for independence, democracy, justice, women pushing hard for voting rights, equality.
So a positive force.
Largely, yes. The revolution, you could argue, was fueled by all these accumulated hopes.
Okay, so that's the picture before 79. What changed after the revolution? Did that hopeful energy continue, or did the new regime see hope differently?
Very differently, radically differently. With the rise of the Islamic Republic, that very hopeful energy became a target. It was systematically targeted.
How?
The regime actively worked to cultivate what some scholars, like Asef Bayat, call the politics of grief.
Politics of grief.
Yeah, it sounds stark, but it was a deliberate strategy, aiming to institutionalize a kind of despair, or at least submission.
How would they institutionalize despair? What does that look like?
Concrete things. Outlawing festivals centered on joy things like Shasham Besuri, Yalda, even Valentine's Day.
Really banning festivals.
Oh, yes. Saturating public spaces with martyr iconography, mourning imagery, mandating mourning rituals in schools, in government offices, banning public dance, music, celebrations, and, very visibly, using morality policing to suppress women's agency and freedom.
So it wasn't just random cultural conservatism. It was a calculated effort.
Exactly. These were deliberate political strategies aimed at controlling the national psyche, producing psychological compliance, basically trying to stamp out the expressions and symbols of hope.
Trying to make people give up on the idea of change itself.
Precisely.
So given that intense, systematic effort, was hope just extinguished? I mean, did it work? Did hope just die out?
Not at all. That's what's remarkable. Despite all those deliberate efforts, hope was never extinguished, not even close.
So what happened to it?
It morphed, it adapted, it found new ways to reemerge, and it did so primarily through, well, women, youth, and artists.
Okay, tell me about that. Women and youth first.
Their role as civic agents is just undeniable. Think back to Vita Movahead's protest in 2017. Just standing silently on a utility box, holding her removed headscarf on a stick. A quiet act, but immense defiance.
A powerful image.
Huge. And that connects right through to the massive Woman Life Freedom movement in 2022. Women have consistently embodied hope as defiant.
And youth. Gen Z.
Yes, Generation Z. They bring this global fluency, this clear moral compass. They've picked up the torch using digital protest, incredible street art, decentralized organizing. Their resilience is just striking.
So that's women and youth. What about art and imagination?
Hugely important. The role of art, literature, and the imagination. There's a great quote from author Azar Nafisi. She describes imagination itself as a political act in repressive societies.
Imagination as political.
Absolutely. Think about Iranians preserving memory, preserving the capacity to dream through banned books, through poetry, through symbolic acts.
Like what?
Like students reading Kafka or Atwood behind closed doors. That's not just reading a book, right? It's this quiet but deeply radical assertion of hope.
Keeping the inner world alive.
Exactly. And then you see anonymous artists reclaiming public space. Fountains dyed red to symbolize bloodshed. Murals being overwritten with protest slogans, people chanting collectively from rooftops at night.
Wow.
These are powerful public performances. They assert a civic spirit that just refuses to be erased.
Okay, so we have these individual acts, these artistic expressions. Does the article suggest they stay isolated, or do they somehow come together into something bigger?
They absolutely coalesce. The article talks about what it calls evolving institutions of hope.
Evolving institutions. What does that mean? Not like bricks and mortar institutions.
No, not necessarily. They're often hybrid forms defying traditional structures. Think about social media campaigns that directly counter state propaganda, or underground art collectives creating work anonymously.
Okay.
Diaspora mobilizations, too, offering solidarity, strategic visibility, connecting people inside Iran with a global network, even though, diaspora groups often face their own internal divisions.
I guess complex too.
It is, but the point is, even though these forms might lack formal structure, they function profoundly as institutions.
How so?
They carry memory forward, they help coordinate action, even if loosely, and they transmit the possibility of a different future across huge distances and difficult circumstances.
That's a fascinating idea. Institutions without walls, almost.
Kind of, yeah.
So bringing this all together then, why is understanding hope in this way active, resilient, institutional? Why is that so critical right now, particularly for Iran?
Well, what's really crucial is how hope functions as a counter-narrative.
Counter to what?
Counter to authoritarian fatalism. It's this defiant statement that says, no, the future is not already written. The Islamic Republic's narrative relies heavily on this idea of inevitability, that things cannot fundamentally change. Hope, just by existing and being practiced actively, directly undermines and dismantles that claim.
It's an act of, narrative sabotage.
That's a great way to put it.
Yes.
Sabotage against fatalism.
And beyond just countering the regime's narrative.
Well, connecting to the bigger picture, hope also builds bridges. It helps foster a sense of shared stakes in the future, across ethnic divides, between generations, even linking people inside the country with the diaspora.
That seems vital.
It is, especially in a region where conflict and division often shut down empathy and common ground. Hope reopens that space for collective imagination, for collective action.
So the article seems to frame hope ultimately as, more than just an emotion, more than a strategy even, something more fundamental, like a duty.
Yes, it really culminates there, defining hope as both a civic duty and a civic virtue.
A duty to hope.
In this active sense, yes. To hope means, first, remembering past struggles, knowing the history, but not being paralyzed by the setbacks.
Okay.
Second, it means actively envisioning a different future, even if you don't know exactly what it looks like, keeping that possibility alive.
The imaginative part.
Right. And third, crucially, it means acting in the present, with purpose, with solidarity, and using that imagination.
Remember, envision, act.
Exactly. And the article's closing thought really hits home. In the face of all the fear, the suppression, the shadow of war, hope might genuinely be Iran's most subversive and most generative force.
Subversive and generative.
Yeah. And it argues it's time we reclaim it not just as a feeling, but as this deep civic virtue.
Wow. So we've really journeyed through this idea. We've seen how hope in Iran isn't some passive wish.
Not at all.
But an active, strategic, really enduring form of civic strength. A powerful counter-narrative against despair.
It is quite an aha moment, isn't it, to realize that this thing we often dismiss as just sentiment.
Yeah. Oh, that's hopeful thinking.
Right. But through deliberate suppression on one side and this incredible, resilient rebirth on the other, it's become almost institutionalized, a core part of a nation's struggle for its own future.
Truly profound. And maybe this leaves a question for you, our listener. How might actively cultivating hope, thinking of it not just as a passive wish, but as a civic virtue, as we've discussed, how might that change how we approach challenges? Whether it's in our own communities or looking at the wider world, maybe consider how that commitment, that decision to work towards changing reality, even when the outcome is uncertain, how that might just be your most powerful act.
Thank you for listening to the Iran 1400 Project podcast. The Iran 1400 Project invites scholars, experts, and intellectuals to share their assessment of the evolution of institutions and ideas during the past 100 years to inspire a vision of Iran in the 1400s. If you found today's episode thought-provoking, be sure to subscribe, share, and continue the conversation. For more content and upcoming events, visit Iran1400.org. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and stay hopeful.